So I've been wanting to do this for a while. Obviously things got in the way, but I wanted to carry on doing it because I found out some really amazing things just from my own kind of personal curiosity and just going down a rabbit hole that's on the internet, I guess. But what I want to say before I start is that these are my impressions. If you go online and you start looking up this kind of stuff, there's quite a lot of people who have I think if you go looking for bad, you'll find bad in anything. And there's some people who probably take some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about and kind of look into it too much. Because in my opinion, I think that any visibility is great. Any sort of exposure is great. It normalises things. So that's about how the way it goes. I'm also missing a slide. So this is how professional this actually is. The next slide was supposed to be some characters of games I've actually got. With my character actually in, to drive home the thing that whenever I play online I tend to gravitate towards a female character. Never wanted to play a male character, don't know why, just doesn't feel correct, doesn't feel right. It's just something that I kind of do. So there was pictures of my numerous World of Warcraft characters, some Skyrim characters, all those kind of bits and pieces, but you're looking if you get to miss that one. So for me it was always about picking a character was this extension of me. It's something I've done for a long time. I've been playing video games. I collect games now, and it's just something that felt like a proper extension of me and my personality. And put in perspective, the World of Warcraft character I played mainly is nearly 20 years old now. All she's had done is different hairstyles. I think the games and the experiences and stories they actually offer and can tell can be a fantastic support for anybody on the trans spectrum. I think there's a way of expressing yourself that's safe, it's comfortable, and you can do whatever you actually want to do with it with regards to the world you're playing actually in. You know, you get freedom of choice in the avatar you choose to interact with the world, and for me that's what I would classify as an active choice. Through this presentation you're going to see there's quite a lot of active stuff and there's quite a lot of passive things as well. I think that if you have something in a narrative or a character that you interact with, be it a non-player character, then that's the more passive side for me. That's where the presentation is being normalised, and you might as well be interacting with anybody. It just happens that they've got a trans slant actually on it. As I said at the beginning, it's a rabbit hole. So don't take what you're going to see on the screen as being gospel or 100%. Even yesterday when I was chatting to Ruth and finishing off bits and pieces, I was finding new things. So it is just the tip of the iceberg. So to start off with, some of the biggest brands in gaming have had trans content. So you've got Assassin's Creed with Ned Weiner, an actual historical character that existed if you want to go down that rabbit hole. Rainbow Six Siege has an operator you can play up called Osa. Fortnite had a tie-up with DC Comics to introduce their transgender superhero Dreamer in there as a skin you can actually download. The Sims 4 actually has trans options in the character creator. Watch Dogs has a story character called Miranda. Grand Theft Auto, not so much of a great example because it's more comedy, but like I say, it's about being out there, it's about visibility. They could have had any type of character. And then The Last of Us Part 2 with Lev, that actually is a character that actually has quite a large story arc actually in there. There's some of facial animations in there. If anybody has watched Star Trek Discovery, they're actually from one of the characters actually in there as well. So going to my first thing about active choices. So for me, ignore Cyberpunk for the time being. I want to talk about massively multiplayer online games. These games provide both the ability to create an avatar of your choosing, as well as providing a living, breathing world in which to exist and interact with other characters and players. On a base level, you are who you portray on your screen, the avatar you create however you want to be. So, as an introductory point for that, when I started playing World of Warcraft, I didn't play at a very high level. I played that game for nearly 2 years, and anybody in that game I played with just knew me as my warrior Shadowheart or my paladin Rainstone. They didn't know who was behind the screen, and I got treated accordingly. And that leads me to my first example. So one of my characters got married in game. I got married to a paladin. We did all the usual bits and pieces. We went around gathering each other's gifts, spent a lot of money, agonised over dresses. We even had the wedding ceremony in the main human city in World of Warcraft in Stormwind. Initially, when we started to promote it, we got ridiculed because it was a role-playing game, and apparently you don't role-play in role-playing games. But then the whole server built onto it, and in the middle of our amazing ceremony, before we jetted off to have our honeymoon somewhere, the whole of Stormwind was invaded by the opposing faction. So our little wedding, our little non-event, actually kicked off a giant server-wide event. We got so many thanks, we got so many random emails, so many comments in game. It was absolutely amazing, really. But not once was I asked if I was a guy or a girl behind the screen. We were just treated as the person we were portraying. I don't think I've ever played any other character, any male characters in any MMOs I've played. So, City Heroes, very strange looking, dominatrix looking person actually in there. World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, Star Wars: The Old Republic. My female bounty hunter is most definitely a female and a bit of a tart, but hey ho. Each of them has given me the opportunity to exist in the world and to present as I felt fit. The character creation suites in there allow you to customise as much as you actually want. You can be tall, short, fat, thin, long-haired, short-haired, muscular, whatever you actually want. It's totally up to you. So for all intents and purposes, you can create yourself. Character creation isn't just limited to massively multiplayer online games, but it's how you present a version of you to a living world full of other people that make it really powerful and really rewarding. I'm sure anybody who's played a game and has created a character will say how long they've spent creating a character. Sometimes it can take longer. When we get onto this, the cyberpunk character creations, it's a game into itself. So moving on to passive stuff. So passive stuff is games that include transgender content and characters within their stories and their game modes. This is where it might end up being a little surprising, because there is so much of it, like I said at the beginning. There's so much, there's little characters, little story threads. You'll see later on there's some independent things that actually point directly towards trans experiences. Some of those are really hard hitting as well, so when we do get there, just go down that rabbit hole with a little bit of caution. I'm going to highlight some titles and the content they provide, but trust me, like I said, there's many more out there. So starting off, role-playing games. Classic one, you can play the character you actually want to be, no parameters, nothing set in stone. You're not Joe Smith going to go and save that world, you are you for all intents and purposes. So with Cyberpunk, you create a character, you give them a name in V. It's a massive title across multiple formats, and the content that is specific to being trans has been experienced by millions and millions of people worldwide. The character creator, V, lets you create the V you want to be. It can be male, it can be female, it can be trans. Every other thing you could possibly want to tweak, from cheeks to eyebrows to hair to implants to down there. You've got choices on genitals and size and bits and pieces as well if you really want to do that kind of thing. There's hours to be lost creating the character, the avatar you want to be before you even set foot in Night City. The thing that resonated me most is that it's played from a first person perspective, so you put all this time, all this effort into creating your version of V to spend a tiny percentage of time actually seeing your V. You only ever see V when you actually look in the mirror. So when you go into the mirror, you go into your flat, your room, you want to customise something, you'll see your character. So the rest of the time it's looking through your eyes. So the world judges you and acts with you on the person that you actually present. There's the full story arc as well, which is for Claire Russell there. She's a trans character. She gives you a story which you follow on through. It's all to do with racing, essentially. But the end reward is you actually get her car, Beast, complete with trans flags on the dashboard and the rear bumper sticker as well. It's a little sort of moment in the game. It's optional, you don't have to follow that actually through. But if you do, and you get that, I only use that vehicle in game now. There's probably far better ones, but to me it's just a a little nod to actually how I want to present. Moving on to other massively multiplier games other than World of Warcraft. So this is where you start finding more and more of your story-driven characters. So Tyria is the world where Guild Wars 2 is actually based. Within that world you'll meet Sia. She's a non-player character who was formerly known as Simon, and she doesn't hide that actually in game. As you get to know Sia, you will learn that she transitioned publicly by the power of magic, and for anybody on that spectrum, if only, hey? The desire was driven by her desire to live her life to the full after the fall of her faction, of the boss, the Scarlet Riot, which is the big bad living body of Living World Season 1, which is the first season of the game. The in-game dialogue is quite poignant. Scarlet destroyed so much in the blink of an eye. It reminded me of how short life is and how we should spend every moment embracing the person that we are. I think anybody who is trans and has actually managed to win that battle will resonate with that statement. RuneScape started off with a game that looked like Lego, and it's progressed through the year and keeps on getting changed. You meet a similar character in RuneScape in Angov. She's a character that was essentially in a same-sex relationship to start off with. Through the power of magic and the crystals that have driven the rest of her brethren mad, she changes how she wants to be, and she starts presenting how she wants to. And in fact, in the language that exists within RuneScape, Angov means forgotten, because she wants to forget the past and move on to the forward. Head across to Japan now. So Squaresoft, Square Enix, however you look at it, have long had a history of trans-related content. I never knew this one until I started looking at it. I love Chrono Cross. Chrono Cross is one of my most favourite role-playing games ever, and I was totally unaware of this. So Flea is a character that exists in there. It's got a little tweak in the Japanese version. She's actually called Mayonaya. How that translates to Flea is a different thing, but Flea in the European American releases reflects the fact that eventually you have a boss fight with her and Ozzy and Slash, and they're obviously all tributes to rock guitarists and musicians. Flea's an interesting character. She has this comment through the game which says, "Man or woman, it's all the same. Power is beauty, and I'm deliciously strong." It's another stunning quote. She does special moves in Chrono Cross when she appears called the Stare, which just actually helps amplify a little bit more about what she's all about. This is where you start getting into interesting things. So what might be deemed as being trans-centric in Japan gets lost when you come to America and Europe. So it was an item in there you could get from in the game called Mayonaira's bra. But we're not going to have that in Europe. No, we should just call it Flea's vest. Obviously exactly the same item. But that's where you start to see where people are starting to twist things and change things a little bit as it goes across. And it's a reoccurring theme. Some of the people we'll see later on, the journey they have to try and explain, or for people to understand who they are, is quite mad. Final Fantasy IX, we have a genderless character in Quinea. Depending on the translation of the game again, she can be treated as male or female. However, underneath all that, there is an achievement that you can only get in some version of the game called Femme Fatales. If you have Quinea in your party, you can achieve that. And it is supposed to be an all-girl party. It's where, another example of where things are a little bit hazy fantasy, because again, not in all locations in the world, and not in all versions of the game. But it keeps on going. Role-playing games, for the main protagonist, yourself, let you create what you want to do, and then you can carry on going. So you hit BioWare. BioWare have long had a history of being very welcoming to the LGBTQ plus family. So in Dragon Age Inquisition, you can meet Prem, which is a female to male character. It's not all about male to female. Prem is revealed to be female to male through a story arc. The story is shown to be typical of many on the trans spectrum, with Krem realising they were different to the other girls they knew. They're shown to have pretended to shave with their father, lie about their gender to serve in the military, and bribe healers in game to stop them revealing their secret while serving as a male. Again, it's another game that actually has a specific term for this. It's called Aqun a Flock, or born as one gender but living like another. The character is even more deeply rooted into the LGBTQ plus society, because it was created by BioWare within the game after actively seeking feedback from that community. They wanted to know how the community thought about their portrayal of LGBTQ plus characters within their games. And then we move along, and another example of them listening with Hayley Abrahams in Mass Effect Andromeda. She was in the game, straight there as a trans character, but there was a lot of feedback about how they just opened up far too easily about their story. I don't know about anybody else, but I find it incredibly hard to feel confident enough to talk to anybody about me in this kind of way. It's just about that feeling of how are people going to react. What kind of assumptions are they going to make? So BioWare went back into Andromeda and actually changed that. And they even ended up putting a statement in there from saying that she says to another person, Hayley Abrams, Andromeda Explorer, that's me, feels good and feels right. BioWare have tendrils of our community throughout their games. So further stuff, just things for people to think about. Some of these are massive titles. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild on the Switch has, I don't want to spoil this, so people has trans content. Horizon Zero Dawn, which blew me away, has trans content. Baldur's Gate Siege of Dragonspear has a trans character actually in it. And Nier Replicant and Nier Reincarnation both feature a character called Kane, which is one of those ones you can take either way. Moving on from role-playing games, you can find transgender topics covered by one of the biggest and best-known game developers in the world, in Nintendo. And they provided the world with one of the most unlikely but earliest trans characters in Birdo. In the North American manual, it explicitly states that he thinks he is a girl, I don't get this bit, and he spits eggs from his mouth. He'd rather be called Birdetta. Goes to show that we're all different, we're all different shapes, different sizes, but it doesn't mean that our spirit, our internal soul can't be something else. Birdo's ended up appearing in many games over the years, so it's not something that Nintendo have hidden actively, and some of these add really great wrinkles to the character. So Super Smash Bros. Brawl on the Wii has a trophy for Birdo, where there is flavour text saying gender indeterminate. And depending on the location, she either has non-specific pronouns like it, or specific ones like she or her. She even has a role in a game that only came out in Japan on the Wii called Captain Rainbow, where they're imprisoned for using the ladies' toilet, as the robot attendant doesn't believe they're a girl. An item, which is blurred out, so you can make your own assumption what that might actually be, is retrieved that convinces the attendant that they are a girl, and they are released. They also have a deep male voice in that title that goes very high-pitched when angry or excited. There's a lot more to Birdo for you to look at. If you actually dig into a Google search, it's quite incredible. She has been in so many Nintendo games, from the mainline Mario games to Mario Kart to Mario Party to Mario Tennis to Mario Smash Soccer, you name it, she's appeared in it. It's something that they're proud about. Another couple of Nintendo titles. Paper Mario, 1000 Year Door, the most unlikely trans character ever, I think, after Birdo, would be Vivian, which is that little character there, which I did put on the Facebook group. Vivian has got an interesting story. In the Japanese version, she's presented as a boy who looks like a girl, and non-explicitly identified as transgender. She does suffer from misgendering, and she is also called a crossdresser through the game. In the English and German translations, there are no mentions of being transgender, and the misgendering changed to insults about her appearance. In every other location around the world, her status as a transgender woman is embraced, with the Italian version in particular highlighting this. In that version, Vivian expresses her pride in her transition. She pushes back against previously mentioned comments by saying, "I'm proud to have turned into a woman." The final Nintendo games I'd like to highlight are Pokemon X and Y on the Nintendo 3DS. Pokemon's a hugely popular series. I remember launching Red and Blue way back in the day when I worked for Electronics Boutique. And it's brilliant to think that the developers felt comfortable enough to introduce something potentially trans as in related content, because it's never been clearly stated that this was the case. It was something they just put in the game and just said, there you go, experience it. In this instance, they have a character called Beauty Nova. It's that character there. Now with Beauty Nova, it's all about dialogue. So she has a line that says, "I was a karate king just a half year ago. The power of medical science is awesome, wouldn't you say?" Leaving it a bit ambiguous if you think about it. That's the literal Japanese to English translation. However, if you go to the English localized version, it's, "Yes, a mere half year ago I was a black belt." It is quite the transformation, wouldn't you say? So to clarify, Black Belt is an all-male Pokemon trainer in-game, and the female trainers are called Battle Girls. So whilst it's not 100% there, it's something that you can interpret and take and think, wow, in a game of that stature, of that title, you can actually imagine there being something trans related inside of it. This is where we just do a slight deviation to the more indie games for PC. So when I say games, I mean games in a loose sense of term. A lot of these are experiences. I know I said look at them in caution, but I would honestly recommend having a crack at least one or two of these. So the three that jump out at me through my research was Dysphoria. Dysphoria is a very, very simple game. In fact, to call it a game is probably doing it a disservice. It's very simple. It looks like a game from 30, 40 years ago, but it's designed and written by a transgender programmer, and its goal was to provide some insight on the challenges and frustrations transition can bring to individuals on that journey. It's a deceptively simple looking series of games. We use the arrow keys and whatever you decide to play actually on. But the information and the quick hitting sort of experiences that you have are there to make you think, blimey, you know, we've talked about this in earlier meetings, should things be this hard for somebody who wants to transition? You know, I feel like a spy whenever I use the women's toilets when you're trying to escape people. You know, everybody calls me sir. There's a simple game part of it where you're going through a brick wall. It's a TV show, isn't it? The whole thing where you have to make a funny state and the thing comes past you where you get pushed over. It's a bit like that, and it's all designed about how to make you realise that this little tiny bit of frustration you're experiencing in these 20 to 30 second snippets is how, if you multiply it, how somebody going down the transition route might feel and how hard it actually is. The developer says that this was a story about frustration. In what other form do people complain as much about being frustrated? A video game lets you set up goals for the player and make her fail to achieve them. A reader can't fail a book. It's an entirely different level of empathy that most people simply can't comprehend. And that's where games also differ. I know that Dysphoria is very quick hitting, but games, you can spend 20, 30 hours playing a game, more in some cases. If you watch a movie, it's 2-3 hours if at max. If you read a book, it might be a few nights. If you're really into it, you blast through it. But within a game, you get an opportunity to properly live, breathe, and just exist in those worlds. If you actually want to try Dysphoria, you do have to Google search for it. It is actually there. The original people who used to host it don't anymore, but it is available to play. And like I say, it's 5 minutes of everybody's time is really worthwhile just giving it a go. Acceptance is a visual novel. again, it's a very short experience. Its background is that it was actually created as part of what they call a game jam, where they get a bunch of programmers together to churn out a piece of software in a short period of time, almost like in a competition format. But in this instance, it wasn't a competition, it was done as a memorial for a transgender person called Leela, who died. This game is unashamedly hard-hitting. It says through the basic instructions that are offered that it's really designed for a cisgender person to actually play, so they get some kind of level of understanding about what it means to be trans. There's lots of warnings giving you beforehand, telling you that, are you really sure you want to experience this? Because it is hard-hitting. Seemingly everyday choices are presented from a point of view of the transgender player with a steady escalation in difficulty. You know, the example there is men's disabled or ladies' toilets, and presented in the sort of sphere of a video game, it should be a simple choice, but is it? It's all about playing something that's a very sobering experience. It shows you the trials and tribulations of everyday trans life, and again, it's something that if you want to play, it's there. It's free to play if you want to play, but the developer does accept donations as well. Dream Daddy is a bit more unusual. On the surface, it's a very sugar-coated game for, like I said, a dad dating simulator. Within all that though, you've got Damien. Damien is a character that through the interactions you actually have within game is revealed to be trans. It's a visual novel game, so it's just simple choices and simple mini games. Damien's little quirks here and there that you find are little throwaway comments about chest binders and the like. Again, it's just subtle, it's just there, it's just literally for you to actually experience as part of the game. It's not, I mean, he's there with a flag, but it's not about waving a flag and jumping up and down and that. It's just another character in the game that if you spend your time to get to know, you'll find these extra wrinkles. And then going back to what I said at the very beginning, it's just normalised. It's just a normal progression, another character for you to interact with. So the final main game I'd like to talk about is Catherine. Catherine has a very fleshed out character in Erica. It's also a very, can be quite an expensive game to buy nowadays. Erica is, the reason I'm finishing this actually is Erica kind of sums up everything about the views of trans video games across, I guess, the critical people on the internet. There's a lot of praise for Erica of being a positive portrayal of being a transgender woman and for representing a minority demographic. She's painted in the game as being likeable, kind, caring, and just happens to be a transgender person, much like everybody in this room. She passes in the real world, seems satisfied and happy with her transition and being thought of as female. She's in her 30s, which is unusual because normally a trans character in the game doesn't get an age assigned to it. LGBTQ people are often told that being that is just something that they'll grow out of, which I'm sure you'll agree isn't the truth. I mean, I'm 50 next week, I haven't grown out of it yet. Many fans feel that Erica is a very humanised person in game, with her opinions and emotions as you go through her storyline, and they're able to empathise with her. She's also seen as a fan favourite, and you can find images of her being cosplayed across online. She's also a very clever character because, I don't know about anybody else, but I drifted through various names as I attempted to find myself, whereas they've just taken their first name and the surname and added it together to get Erica, which is quite a simple way of looking at it. She's also an example of how I said that people can overanalyse things and dig in too much. She isn't revealed to be trans properly until the end of the game, which, if you want to be cynical, could be seen as a plot twist, despite lots of ongoing game hints. There are other things that people have picked upon, her surname being a practical joke, because this is how crazy the internet actually goes. Anderson literally means the son of Anders, which itself means manly in Greek. She's also dead named as Eric by the game in the credits, in the instruction manual, and in the art book you could get if you were looking to drop on one of the super duper mega collector's editions at the beginning. The art book also goes as far as describing her as having broad shoulders and states that her sex is actually male. There is more, but I think it's too easy to find the negative. If you're playing a game and experiencing the game, why do you want to go online and then try and shoot down the experience you're actually having? There is so much more transgender content actually out there in the world, and when I finish, there's a couple of slides at the end which just give you a few more tidbits to look at. So why did I call this invisible visibility? It's invisible because anyone can be anyone they want in a virtual world, be it amongst others in an online world or saving the world from disaster in a single player experience. Video games can provide an escape from the real world, providing a place to escape to when you need it. If you just want time out, if you just want to, find a way of expressing yourself, games will give you that opportunity. Visibility, because the wealth of content out there that draws some focus, large or small, in our community, because of the stories that can be experienced and the potential for passive learning through these. You have to think, as I say, games 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 hours long. The characters that people present. When somebody, go back to the beginning, if somebody's playing Rainbow Six and they decide to play as Osa, they've naturally chosen to play as somebody who's trans. And it doesn't have to be somebody in the trans community, it can be Bob down the road just picking that character and getting an experience you never would have got before. It just happens to be an experience that's not there with any fanfare. There's very few of them that actually wave their trans flag on their arm. Cyberpunk being one of the exclusions there that might turn people away. It's just about giving you an opportunity to play in that world however you see fit. I could ramble on even more, and thank you for putting up with me now. And I hope maybe I've just lit a fire there. Maybe somebody will go and have a quick search, maybe I'll go on Google and find some random things. But before you do, this is how much further you can actually go. So, going further on, Poison in Final Fight is an example of a character that, depending who you want to speak to, which website you want to read, which version of the game you're going to play, is a trans character. Larissa in the Red Strings Club on PC is an unashamedly trans character. Bridget in Guilty Gear X, another fighting game. Amazing story behind that character. Most people will pick it because she looks quite cool with a nun outfit and a bear, but the story behind her and the world that she came from was a kind of Victorian style world where having twin boys was frowned upon. So when the family had two boys, one was brought up as a boy, one was brought up as a girl. Gilio in Very Expensive Bacon Katos, you wouldn't put down as being trans, but when you start playing the game and you see how they present themselves and the sort of different degrees of being male and female. Leo, Eleonora in the Tekken series, again, that was something that was dropped into Tekken 6 and was fleshed out as the game went further along. Freya Goldust in Dry Drowning, character that wears their heart on their sleeve, again, high from it. Melody and Nina in 2064 Read Only Memories, two trans characters for you in the same story. Pester Quest, Vriska, werewolf, trans. Jackie, a night in the woods, a wolf existing in a little horror story, trans. And then Tyler Ronan in Tell Me Why, another female to male character that this time is actually in a leading role, that is actually there for you to play, experience the story as them, and they just happen to be trans. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope it was something that actually got you interested in doing the reading around, doing the digging around. Like I say, it made me realise that there's so much stuff actually out there for people to digest and experience. And I found it really heartening that we can be represented, that we can be there, and we're not going to be gimmick. It's something that's actually there for people to hopefully learn from. And next time they see somebody down the street that they might think this might be trans, or they read something in the newspaper, maybe they'll have a slightly different tangent on it. Thank you very much.